everybody. How are you this morning? Welcome to another Friday morning. A Friday morning where you and I can be together and spend some time growing our faith, growing our friendships, growing our opportunities to serve one another as we set the foundation of our faith. And as I say every week as I come to share with you, there is no foundation except for Jesus Christ. That's what Paul wrote, that there is no foundation except for Christ, and no other foundation has ever been laid. So there we go. We're here today to spend some time together on foundations. Hope that you are having a good Friday morning. If you're anywhere in the area where we're at, and throughout much of the United States over the course of the last few days, and for us especially here today, going to be in the 90s with heat indexes in the 100s, which means I'm going to be staring at the sunshine through a window on the air-conditioned side of the building, okay? Maybe you're going to be doing that as well. So maybe you like to get out in the water a little bit. That would be a great way to cool off today. So there you go. We're going to be warm, and you're going to have an opportunity to stay warm today as well. I got a feeling if you live anywhere near us. So yeah, just all kinds of fun. I always love talking about the weather. I don't know why, but I guess it's because I rely on the weather quite heavily. So if you're not here in Marion, Indiana area, in other words, you're not in the central Indiana area, and you're listening, just go ahead and tell us down below what is the temperature where you're at. That's not today's question, but you can just go ahead and tell us what the temperature is where you're at. And I was talking to a friend of mine from Florida the other day, and I think it was actually cooler in Florida than it was here. So there we go, okay? Glad to have you with me this morning, and I'm really excited about finishing up this series called The Top 10, talking about the 10 Commandments and talking about how they impact our lives as we live for Jesus Christ today as believers who do not live under the law. I wasn't teaching this so that we would learn the law and then live under the law. I was teaching this so that you could understand how the 10 Commandments stand out in history as something that set the stage for the way you and I live today within the structure that God has given us and the boundaries He's given us as we live for Him and the work of the Holy Spirit in our life, and as we live in obedience and we live in submission to His will. So that's what I've been trying to accomplish. If you've not got that out of our time together, I'm sorry. I certainly gave it a good effort, and I got a feeling that if you and I sit down and talk, maybe we'd clear it up. All right? So if you need to do that, feel free to give me a call. Feel free to email me, text me. I am always enjoying time sitting down, having something cold to drink with someone. I really enjoy Mountain Dew and Mellow Yellow. Zero, of course, because I need zero to keep my size under control. So, all right. All right, let's jump into today's question. I know all of you are waiting with bated breath on the edge of your keyboard, waiting for me to ask the question because you can't hardly hold yourself back. Okay, some of you just haven't commented at all. So today's your day. This is your day. If you've never commented before, today's your day. If you've commented before, you're not off the hook, okay? You still got to comment. But if you've not commented, today's your day. I need you to jump in and comment today and let me know the answer to this question. Here we go. If you described your personality as a color, what color would it be? If you were to describe your personality as a color, what color would it be? And so for me, I really had to give this some thought as to what I would answer for myself today, and I came up with this. I really like royal blue. I like navy blue too, but I like royal blue. I think it's a really nice color. My son was a North Carolina fan. Obviously, they got some royal blue color to them, and you know the Royals in baseball, that color. But I love royal blue, navy blue. I like blues as a whole. It's not my favorite color because I don't know if I have a favorite color, but that's it. So I can describe mine as royal blue. And you say, what does that mean, Bill? Well, I think royal blue is a fun color that has depth and purpose to it. And I think hopefully if you've been around me very long, I'm a fun person, but I also want to have some strength, and to grow, and to do that you have to have some depth and some purpose behind you. And so I hope that helps you to pick out a color. Comment down below. Let me know what the color is if you were to describe your personality. Write the color down below, okay? So as we continue this top 10 series and finish it up today, here we are in our last week. I want to just say I have really enjoyed this. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, one of my favorite topics to teach. And so as we have kind of got this all together today, we're going to crescendo with some thoughts that will hopefully turn on the want in your heart and life to be able to follow and know what the Ten Commandments look like in your life. So here we go. Let's talk about what we've talked about in the past few weeks, and we will go from there. So first thing we talked about right from the very start is the fact that God did not give the Ten Commandments as a condition for the relationship he was going to establish with the people. Instead, it was a confirmation of the relationship they already had with God. He had already chosen the Israelite people way back to Abraham. We looked at the history, and we know these people were his chosen people. This was Abraham's family who had grown up, and Jacob's family specifically, whose name turned to Israel. It was his family specifically that was the ones that grew in Egypt and then were in a place where they were put into slavery. So, right? Secondly, God's rules and laws were not given to get you into God's good graces. Instead, it is something that helps us to keep free people free. It's not to make bad people good, but it's to keep free people free. What that means is that if you are involved in something that causes harm to your life, then the Ten Commandments would stand out as something that God would say, here's how to stay away from sin, which is detrimental to the walk you have and to the well-being that you want for your life. So that is the second thing we talked about. Then God began to kick in with the Ten Commandments and said, I want to be your one and only. And then throughout the next commandments, he said, don't shrink me down or create anything with your hands that you think will represent me. And we talked a little bit about, and I got a little close to the skin when I said, be careful about the icons in your life. Make sure you're not looking to your icons for your relationship with Christ, or you're leaning on icons of any kind to get through in your relationship and your communication with God. So make sure we're careful about that. And then last week we talked about not last week, but then 2 weeks ago we talked about the fact that we need to control our tongue and not to leverage God's name for our benefit. Do not leverage God's name for our benefit. I talked about how if you ordered in my name from someplace, you're leveraging my name to get product that I did not give you the permission to order. If you need to know all those things, you can feel free to go back and look at the previous weeks and see what has happened in the previous teachings. The last was last week we talked about and that is basically this command, thou shalt take a day off. And so it's interesting that God says, as you prioritize me, make sure you're prioritizing time off to rest and relax and to get some time down. So here we are today now as we come back to Exodus chapter 20. Going to pick up today in verse 12 and read from there. And it says this, honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor. You must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. I heard one person one time who said this. I thought it was pretty funny. And it said that it talked about the ox or the donkey. It was the SUV and the real nice car that they had. So you're not to be coveting your neighbor's SUV or nice car. So I thought that was pretty cute. All right. So it now becomes clear that God has given us the top 10 in a specific order. As a matter of fact, I think it best helps us understand our relationship with God and creates an opportunity for you and I to learn what it looks like to walk with Jesus Christ as we get a look at these commands. And so the order of the Ten Commandments is basically set out this way. First it starts with God tells us to honor him. God says, honor me by doing these things. And then he says some other things which repeats the formula Jesus set out when he said, you will love the Lord God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Basically, this is the first command. You'll love your neighbor as yourself. So love God, love people. So today we're going to see how that command, or that basically that statement and that teaching of Jesus comes to life in the Ten Commandments. These are so practical that if you and I would live out these few things, we would find ourselves in a place where we truly would find ourselves being free people. You see, today, and I'm not trying to make fun, I'm not trying to slam anyone, that's not my point, but I want you to think about it. We live in a day and age today where people are running faster, thinking faster, doing faster, seeing more, and we're stimulated more than we've ever been. We stimulate ourselves through caffeine. We keep ourselves awake doing crazy things. We watch enough television to kill a horse. We work less than we've ever worked as far as humans are concerned. We have more free time. We have more free money. We live in a very, very basically materialistic world, especially here in the United States. And so these next few things really hit at our core convictions and our core activities. And so here we go. Let's jump in and let's look at the last of the commandments. The first one is you need to honor your mother and your father. As a matter of fact, what's interesting is that as the one for taking a day off has all this explanation, this one has a promise. It says basically when you honor mom and dad, you live a better and longer life. And when you don't honor mom and dad, you don't. Now, I don't know exactly everything God meant by that, but here's what I know. When a child doesn't honor mom and dad, when mom and dad have raised them with honorable and good ways to live, in good intentions, good motives, live with compassion, with purpose. When someone is raised that way, they're less likely to get involved in activities that would take their life, which is craziness, getting drunk and driving, or stealing from people, or hurting other people, or breaking the law in any way. People who grow up and follow through on good teachings from their parents, from parents who take the time to teach good things to their kids and discipline their kids to make sure they get that message, and that's key. It'd be cute if we could just maybe discipline kids a little more, because what the promise is that when you do that, God sets within motion His life inside of them as He begins to call them to Himself, and they live a longer and fuller life because they live a principled life that is based on God's standards. And so when you and I realize that this promise is given to you and I, that if we will honor mom and dad, live so that they're not embarrassed by us, basically, and I'm not sure embarrassed is the right word, but that's it. Parents sometimes go, oh man, I raised you better than that. My dad used to say, when you go in public, make sure you act right, because people are going to look and say, that's Archie Sparks' son. And so I always was to represent my father in the way that I lived. And I tell you what, you and I can represent our father in a way that others look and say, why do you live the way you live? And Peter said to be ready to give an answer when they see that kind of lifestyle. So first off, he says, honor your mother and father, which gets us then into the order God has given the commandments. And that is, first off, honor me, and then secondly, honor other people. And that's what this command and the one following all talks about. Let's honor other people. Don't just honor God, but now, because you honor me, you're going to honor other people. And so that's what these next commands are about. So start with honor your mother and father that you would live a long life. Secondly is don't murder. Don't murder. These are so basic. And you're saying, Bill, you don't have to go back through all these. I know all these. And that's okay. I get it. I'm okay. But listen to me. We don't realize that taking someone's life into our mouth can murder their reputation. And we're going to talk a bit about some of that little down the road as far as false testimony. But here's what I want to say to you. Do you realize that Scripture says that if you're angry with your brother, and basically you just stay there, that's also a way to murder. See, when you are doing it in your head, Jesus said, you're doing it in real life as far as you're answering to me. And see, He wants you to do what's important to Him in your mind first and then through your actions. And so when He says you must not murder, it's pretty obvious. Don't want to kill somebody. But it doesn't mean you're not to ever kill. I'm not going to take that up today, but it doesn't mean, for those of you who say, well, see, you're not supposed to even be in the military. No, it has nothing to do with that. This has to do with meditated murder or murder that happens to someone because of your actions towards another civilian in some sort or fashion, not as a rule or law-keeping person, such as the policeman or the military. And someday I'll do a full thing on that one as well. But today I just need you to know, when it says do not murder, it's not talking about settings. Matter of fact, Romans 13 says, the same thing comes out in Romans 14, that God set these people in place to keep evil people under control. And so if you don't keep evil people in control by saying you're not supposed to be forceful with those that are breaking the law or trying to hurt others, then you do not understand how God intended law and government to be a place in our life that it actually helps us live better. So enough of that. Here we go. On to the next one. You must not commit adultery. Now, really important here. Really, really important here. Listen to me. Jesus said if you think it, you've done it. All right. So I want to go to this real quick because I think it's important that we understand adultery is a person who is involved in an already committed legal marriage situation, and that person is involved and someone else is involved with them, whether they're married or not, is involved with that person, and through that relationship sexually, they become adulterous. And the reason I point it out that way is this. I understand people become emotionally dependent on each other. And that could turn into what people consider to be an emotional affair. But here's what's important. A great friendship does not mean an emotional affair. Okay? A great friendship between two people of the opposite sex, the opposite gender, that does not constitute an affair. The reason I say that is, and I'm not trying to split hairs here. I'm just saying sometimes we have a tendency to accuse people of things because of what we see or what we know about a person, and then we have a tendency to again, and we'll talk about it in a minute, to take their reputation into our mouths and then to ruin it in the hearts and lives of other people. So when it talks about committing adultery, it's talking about specifically being involved at a level, and I would say at a level emotionally where that there's some form of physical comforting or physical affection showed. It doesn't have to get to be sexually. But for sure, once it crosses the line of sexual behavior between someone who's married and someone with them, whether they're married or not, once there's a married person involved, it is adultery. Okay? Anything before marriage, in other words, God says, wait till you find that one spouse, be monogamous, don't have sex beforehand. That's called staying away from fornication. It's not necessarily covered in this Ten Commandments, but it's obvious in this culture that was the standard. And it should be the standard because God says, do not bring your body to sexual practices before marriage. We can talk about that some again, another one. I don't want to take the time here today to cover that. But listen, we must not get involved in relationships, especially sexually, that compromises the marriage that we're in. Okay. The next one, you will not steal. Okay. Now again, I'm going to let's split some hairs maybe, but I'm just telling you, if you walk home today and you have a paper clip from your job in your pocket, you've not stolen anything. Now, if you purposely keep taking paper clips so you don't have to buy any, that's a different story. But some people get so hung up and so legalistic, and that's not what I want you to fall into. That if you leave the office with a pen in your pocket that doesn't belong to you, it's, oh my goodness, I got to take it back now because I'm a Christian. Listen, God does not want you to live on that edge. It's that kind of craziness that nearly drives us away from God in the long run because you can't live perfect lives. And so you're always wondering what God's up to and whether he loves you or not, and that's just a trash heap. And that's not what God intended through the Ten Commandments, and that's not what Jesus meant when he said, if you think it, you've done it. Okay? So you must not steal. In other words, you will not purposefully take a hold of anybody else's property. Your neighbor's property, your employer's property, the government's property when it comes to taxes. Be honest on your tax returns. So do what is right, is what he says. Do what is right. When it comes to other people's property, and do not steal. Honor other people's property. Do not break it. Do not cause harm to it. Do not steal it from them and their use by causing it not to work. There's 1,001 ways I could probably try to say this, but any moment that you're honoring yourself over someone else, you're beginning to take these commandments into account and you're beginning to break them. And through that, you see you're not actually being what Jesus said, which is loving God and then loving others. The next one is you must not testify falsely against your neighbor. In other words, let your words always be true. Let your words always be true. Honor the reputations of others. Honor their reputation when you talk about them. Honor them through the words you say about them. The old silly phrase you've heard people say, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. Well, I get some of that as well. I get it, okay. But here's what I'm saying. When you think about it, even when you can't say something good and you're asked, you don't have to slam them. One of the things that's very difficult, I've been in a situation where I'm the employer, and when you have someone ask what kind of work a person does or how good of a worker they are, when I worked in retail, you couldn't tell them. You'd say, listen, I can only give you the hire date, the fire date, and so on. But if somebody calls me and says, hey, you know, JoJo applied for a job. Is JoJo reliable? Is JoJo an honest person? Is JoJo going to be a good employee? Then I need to make sure if I say yes or no, I say the right things. And if I say yes, to give some things as to why. And if I say no, that I don't just trash him to the future employer, but I just honestly say no. And that's why I used to ask the question every so often. and you can get yourself, it's kind of like walking a tightrope for if you're an HR person, is just to ask, would you rehire this person? And so, I mean, but what I'm getting at is be very, very careful. When you are taking someone else's reputation and you're ruining it, and you're ruining what other people think of them, you are now living in disobedience to what God has asked you to do with your words. And then last and certainly not least, and this one's a tough one, you must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife. You must not covet their servant, their property, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So honor other people's property and their personhood in your thoughts. Discipline your thoughts. Guard your heart is what Proverbs 4:23. For out of the heart, out of the way you think, that's what the heart means there, come all the issues of life. And so when you're in a place where you don't honor other people in your thoughts, then you try to figure out ways in which you can hurt them. I guarantee it. When you've been hurt and you're not willing to let go of it, you're going to end up trying to figure out a way to hurt that person because that's human to do so. And this talks about honoring them through not wanting what they have, not being jealous of what they have, not being hurtful in the things you think about other people, therefore wanting to do something to take away their property or to have the property yourself. All right, that's it. There's the 10 Commandments. We've knocked out the top 10. And so it falls basically in this simple order. Honor God, honor those made in the image of God, and then guard your hearts and minds. That boils down to the way in which the 10 Commandments play out. All right? So as we finish out this week, I want to invite you to join me next week. I'm going to take on a topic that I think could potentially cause some of you to lose your mind. Some of you look at me and go, what in the world is wrong with you, Bill? But it's true, and I believe this to the core of my being. I've come to this conclusion that this is one of the things that has created so much struggle and strife in our current culture, and it's this thought. It's what I call the good, better, best snare. The good, better, best snare. Okay? The good, better, best snare has fallen in many different places, but one specific area it's fallen into, and that is we think we know what's good for other people, what's better for other people, what's best for other people. And so we've become so motivated politically, emotionally, and in our words that we can't even have conversations or talk to each other. And that needs to stop if we're ever going to move ahead as humans and specifically move ahead as a country. And so I'm going to talk a little about that good, better, best next week and the snare it creates as you and I start talking about that in the future weeks ahead. Okay, so I invite you, join me back next week as we talk about the good, better, best snare. Okay, it falls in so many different areas of our life. So anyone knows me knows I believe in growth. So when I talk about in just a few next week, as I begin to talk about how the good, better, best keeps us from growing, it's going to be interesting to say the least. Okay, so but we'll talk about the trap next week. So join me next week for Foundations next Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. So before I get out of here, here's the question for your morning, and that is: if you described your personality as a color, what color would it be? Mine is royal blue because it has some fun to it, and some depth and some purpose. And I think my personality has some fun about it, and some depth and some purpose to it. Okay, that's just me. I could be wrong. You got to comment and let me know. Tell me what you think my color should be. I'll be glad to check that out as well. All right. So join me next week and we'll dive in as we change the focus to the good, better, best trap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in next week. Make sure you share Foundations with your family and friends. Invite them to join you to watch it or to rewatch it. If you're watching on the backside, don't forget to answer the question and comment down below about what color your personality is. All right. Share Foundations through your Facebook page, Instagram, any other social media opportunities you have, and help other people enjoy it. I appreciate your time, appreciate your encouragement. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you, and you all have a great day now, okay? Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.